Lieutenant Commander Rebecca, Storm, Hayes stood outside the military working dog kennels at Naval Base Coronado, reading the termination order for the third time, hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. Subject, immediate termination order MWDK-9 Ghost, M342. Reason, excessive aggression, failure to respond to handler commands, deemed unsuitable for military service and unsafe for civilian adoption. Recommended action, euthanasia. Rebecca had seen these orders before during her 8 years as a Navy SEAL and certified military working dog handler. Sometimes they were justified, dogs with genuine neurological issues or unmanageable temperament problems that made them dangerous. But those cases were rare. Most of the time, termination orders came from handlers who didn't understand the dog, from commanders who saw liability instead of potential, or from systems that gave up too quickly when an animal didn't fit the expected mold. Rebecca suspected Ghost's case was the latter. She'd heard about Ghost through the grapevine, a 3-year-old German shepherd, trained for explosive detection and patrol work, who'd been labeled untrainable by his last 3 handlers. The dog had been returned to the kennels repeatedly, each time with reports of aggression, disobedience, and dangerous behavior. Now, after his 3rd handler had formally requested his termination, the decision had been made. Ghost would be euthanized in 72 hours unless someone intervened. Rebecca walked into the kennel facility, her combat boots echoing on the concrete floor. Rows of kennels housed military working dogs in various stages of training and deployment preparation. Most of the dogs were calm and professional, sitting or lying quietly in their spaces. But at the far end of the corridor, Rebecca heard it. Snarling, barking, the sound of a dog in extreme distress or rage. "That's Ghost," said the kennel supervisor, a grizzled Marine sergeant named Tom Rodriguez. "Been like that for 2 days straight. Won't eat, won't calm down, won't let anyone approach. 3 handlers have tried to work with him. All 3 gave up." "What happened with his previous handlers?" Rodriguez pulled out a file thick with incident reports. First handler said Ghost was too stubborn, wouldn't follow commands, showed food aggression. Second handler reported that Ghost lunged at him during training, nearly bit him. Third handler, the one who requested termination, said Ghost attacked another dog during a training exercise and is a danger to other animals and personnel. Did anyone try to figure out why he was behaving that way? "What do you mean?" "I mean German shepherds don't become aggressive for no reason. They're intelligent, loyal dogs who bond deeply with handlers. If Ghost is showing these behaviors, something's causing them. Trauma, medical issues, handler problems. Did anyone investigate?" Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, with respect, I'm just the kennel supervisor. I don't make decisions about working dog psychology. I house them, feed them, and follow orders. The handlers and trainers determined Ghost is unsuitable for service. That's not my call to question." "Can I see him?" "I wouldn't recommend it. He's dangerous right now. I'm a Navy SEAL who's worked with military working dogs in combat zones for 8 years. I think I can handle an upset German shepherd." Rodriguez led Rebecca to Ghost's kennel at the end of the row. The dog was magnificent, a large male, probably 85 pounds, with classic black and tan coloring and the powerful build of a well-bred working line shepherd. But his behavior was heartbreaking. Ghost paced frantically in the small kennel, snarling and snapping at the chain-link walls. His eyes were wild, his body language screaming distress and fear. This wasn't aggression, this was panic. "How long has he been confined like this?" Rebecca asked. "Since the last incident 3 days ago. Standard protocol for aggressive dogs, isolation until termination. 3 days in solitary confinement with no exercise, no mental stimulation, no human contact. And you're surprised he's losing his mind." "Ma'am, he's dangerous. We can't let him out." Rebecca studied Ghost carefully. His behavior looked aggressive to someone unfamiliar with canine body language. But Rebecca had spent years learning to read dogs in high-stress situations, and she saw something different. Ghost wasn't attacking the kennel walls because he wanted to hurt someone. He was attacking them because he was terrified, trapped, and desperately trying to escape what he perceived as a threat. This was a traumatized dog, not an aggressive one, and there was a crucial difference. "Open the kennel," Rebecca said. "Absolutely not. That dog will attack." Sergeant Rodriguez, I'm giving you a direct order. Open the kennel door and then step back. I'll take full responsibility for. What happens? Rodriguez hesitated, then complied. He unlocked the kennel and retreated quickly, clearly expecting Ghost to charge out in full attack mode. Ghost did charge toward the open door, but then stopped just inside the threshold, confused by the sudden freedom. He snarled at Rebecca, showing teeth, but his body language was defensive, not offensive. He wasn't attacking. He was warning her to stay back because he was scared. Rebecca knelt down 20 feet away, making herself smaller and less threatening. She didn't make eye contact. Direct eye contact was a challenge in dog language. Instead, she looked slightly to the side and spoke in a calm, low voice. Hey, Ghost, nobody's going to hurt you. I know you're scared. I know you've been treated badly, but I'm not like them. I understand you. Ghost's snarling decreased slightly, confusion replacing some of the fear in his eyes. Rebecca very slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of beef jerky. She always carried treats when working with dogs. She tossed it gently toward Ghost, letting it land about 10 feet from him. Ghost eyed the treat suspiciously, but didn't move toward it. It's okay, it's for you. No tricks, no catches, just food because you're probably hungry. Rebecca tossed another piece, this one landing closer to the first. Ghost's nose twitched. He was clearly hungry. Rodriguez had said he hadn't eaten in 2 days. Slowly, cautiously, Ghost moved toward the treats. He grabbed one quickly and retreated, watching Rebecca the entire time, ready to bolt if she made any threatening moves. Good boy, Rebecca murmured. That's it, you're safe with me. She tossed more treats, gradually creating a trail that led closer to her position. Ghost followed the trail, eating each piece, his body language gradually relaxing as he realized Rebecca wasn't a threat. After 15 minutes, Ghost was standing 10 feet from Rebecca, no longer snarling, his tail slightly wagging. Still wary, still ready to flee, but no longer in full panic mode. Ghost, sit, Rebecca said gently, using the hand signal for the command. Ghost immediately sat, his training overriding his fear. His eyes locked on Rebecca, waiting for the next command. Good boy, down. Ghost dropped into a down position, his tail wagging more noticeably now. Stay. Rebecca stood up slowly and walked toward Ghost. The dog remained in position, though his body tensed with each step she took. When she was 5 feet away, Rebecca knelt again and extended her hand, palm down, letting Ghost sniff her scent. Ghost leaned forward cautiously, sniffing Rebecca's hand. Then, in a gesture that made Rebecca's heart ache, Ghost pressed his head against her palm, seeking comfort, connection, the touch he'd been denied for days. You're not aggressive at all, are you? Rebecca whispered, stroking Ghost's head. You're just scared and traumatized and nobody bothered to understand you. Rodriguez stood watching, his mouth open in shock. I don't understand. He was vicious, uncontrollable. How did you? Because I listened to what he was actually communicating instead of just reacting to his behavior. Ghost isn't aggressive. He's terrified. There's a huge difference. Rebecca spent the next hour working with Ghost. Basic commands, recall work, gentle touch desensitization. The dog responded beautifully to everything, clearly well-trained and intelligent. His previous behavior had been purely fear-based, likely triggered by handlers who'd used harsh corrections, physical punishment, or didn't understand his communication signals. I'm taking him, Rebecca announced. Ma'am, you can't. There's a termination order, which I'm formally challenging. As a certified MWD handler with 8 years of experience and a current deployment-ready status, I'm requesting immediate transfer of K9 Ghost to my handling authority. I'll take full responsibility for his behavior and training. Commander Hayes, that dog is scheduled for euthanasia in 3 days. The paperwork is already filed. Then I guess you'd better start filing different paperwork. Because I'm not letting you kill a perfectly good dog because 3 handlers were too incompetent or too lazy to actually train him properly. Rodriguez looked torn between following protocol and recognizing that Rebecca outranked him, and clearly knew what she was doing. I need to contact the base commander. Do that. In the meantime, Ghost comes with me. I'll take him to my quarters, begin proper assessment and training, and provide daily progress reports. If I'm wrong, if he truly is dangerous and unmanageable, I'll bring him back and accept the termination. But I'm not wrong. How can you be so sure? Because I've worked with dozens of military working dogs in combat situations, I know the difference between aggression and fear. Ghost is scared, not dangerous, and with proper handling, proper training, and proper understanding, he'll be an exceptional working dog. Rebecca attached a leash to Ghost's collar and led him out of the kennels. The dog followed perfectly, heeling at her left side, responding to every command, showing none of the aggressive behavior that had led to his termination order. As they walked across the base toward Rebecca's quarters, Ghost stayed close to her leg, occasionally looking up at her with an expression that seemed to ask, "Are you really going to save me? Can I trust you?" "I've got you, boy," Rebecca murmured. "Nobody's going to hurt you again. You're safe now." Rebecca's quarters were a small apartment on base. One bedroom, living area, kitchen, and most importantly, a fenced yard where dogs could exercise. She'd lived here for 2 years, often fostering military working dogs between deployments or handlers. She brought Ghost inside and removed his leash. The dog immediately began exploring, sniffing every corner, marking his territory, behaving like a normal dog finally allowed out of confinement. Rebecca prepared food, high-quality kibble mixed with boiled chicken and rice, something gentle on Ghost's stomach after days of not eating. She placed the bowl down and stepped back, giving Ghost space. Ghost approached the food cautiously at first, then ate ravenously, confirming Rebecca's suspicion that he'd been starving himself from stress in the kennel. After eating, Ghost drank deeply from the water bowl, then approached Rebecca and sat in front of her, waiting for direction. "You're such a good boy," Rebecca said, stroking his head. "I don't know what those other handlers did to you, but it's over now. You're with me, and I'm going to show you what real partnership looks like." She spent the rest of the evening working with Ghost. Basic obedience, playtime with toys, gentle grooming to build trust and connection. The dog responded to everything perfectly, clearly eager to please and desperate for positive interaction. By bedtime, Ghost was relaxed and content, lying on a dog bed Rebecca had set up in her bedroom. When Rebecca climbed into her own bed, Ghost looked up at her with a question in his eyes. "Am I allowed up there?" "Come on up," Rebecca said, patting the bed. Ghost jumped up and curled against Rebecca's side, his head resting on her leg, his whole body relaxing completely for the first time in days, maybe weeks. "We're going to be okay," Rebecca told him. "You and me, we're going to prove everyone wrong about you, and then we're going to show them what an incredible dog you really are." Ghost's tail wagged slightly, and he let out a contented sigh. Rebecca fell asleep that night with one hand on Ghost's head, already planning how she'd rehabilitate his reputation, challenge the termination order, and ultimately prove that this aggressive dog was actually one of the best working dogs she'd ever encountered. But first, she needed to understand what had happened to him. Why 3 handlers had failed with him, what trauma or mistreatment had led to his fearful behavior. Because Rebecca suspected there was more to this story than simple training failures, and she was determined to uncover the truth. The next morning, Rebecca woke to find Ghost watching her with alert, intelligent eyes. The moment she stirred, his tail began wagging. "Good morning, handsome," Rebecca said, stroking his head. "Ready for some real training?" They started with a morning run, 5 miles along the beach, Ghost staying perfectly at heel the entire time. Then breakfast, followed by several hours of training exercises in Rebecca's yard. Ghost excelled at everything: obedience commands, scent detection work, agility exercises, bite work on a training sleeve. He was fast, focused, and incredibly intelligent, exactly what you'd want in a military working dog. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this dog. Nothing that justified a termination order. Nothing that explained why 3 handlers had failed with him. Which meant the problem wasn't Ghost. The problem was the handlers. Rebecca made a call to a friend, Master Chief Petty Officer David "Hawk" Morgan, who worked in the MWD training division and had been handling dogs for over 15 years. "Hawk, it's Storm. I need information about a dog, K9 Ghost, M342. Can you pull his full file, training records, handler assignments, incident reports, everything?" "Ghost, that's the dog with the termination order, right? Why are you asking about him?" "Because I've been working with him for 18 hours and there's nothing wrong with him. He's perfectly trained, highly responsive, shows no aggression. So either I'm missing something major or someone screwed up badly in their assessment." Give me an hour. I'll dig into his records and call you back. Hawk called back 90 minutes later, his voice troubled. Storm, Ghost's file is concerning all three of his handle. Our were relatively inexperienced, less than 2 years each handling military working dogs, and all three have other dogs in their history who developed behavioral problems. Meaning these weren't skilled handlers who happened to get a difficult dog. These were marginal handlers who probably caused the problems they reported. I pulled incident reports, and they're full of red flags, harsh physical corrections, punishment-based training. One handler even reported using a shock collar without authorization. Rebecca felt anger rising. They abused him. They used outdated, punishment-based methods on a sensitive, intelligent dog, and when he reacted negatively to being hurt, they labeled him aggressive. That's my assessment too. But Storm, here's the bigger problem. Those three handlers. They're all working for the same senior trainer, Commander Marcus Blackwell. And Blackwell has a reputation for old-school, dominance-based training methods that a lot of us think are abusive. Why hasn't anyone reported him? People have, but Blackwell has connections, seniority, and he's very good at covering his tracks. He claims his methods are effective, that dogs need strong discipline to be reliable in combat, and enough commanders believe him that he's never faced serious consequences. So Ghost was assigned to 3 of Blackwell's trainees, all of whom used abusive methods that traumatized the dog. And when Ghost reacted like any normal animal would react to abuse, Blackwell pushed for his termination to hide the evidence of mistreatment. That's the theory I'm working with, but proving it is difficult. Blackwell is smart. He makes sure his trainees take the fall if anything goes wrong, keeps himself at arm's length from direct involvement. Not this time, Rebecca said grimly. I'm challenging Ghost's termination order, and I'm filing a formal complaint against Blackwell and his training methods. This dog is evidence that something is very wrong in that program. Storm, be careful. Blackwell has powerful allies. Going after him could damage your career. I don't care. I'm not letting them kill a dog to cover up abuse. Ghost deserves better. Okay, I'll support you however I can, but you're going to need more than just Ghost's rehabilitation to make this case. You're going to need other evidence, other victims, pattern documentation. Then that's what I'll get. Over the next several days, Rebecca worked with Ghost while simultaneously building her case against Commander Blackwell's training program. She documented Ghost's perfect behavior, his responsiveness, his lack of aggression. She video recorded their training sessions, showing a dog who was highly skilled and eager to work. She also started quietly interviewing other handlers who'd worked with Blackwell's trainees, finding a pattern of dogs being labeled aggressive or untrainable after being subjected to harsh corrections and punishment-based methods. One handler, a young Marine corporal named Sarah Chen, broke down crying when Rebecca asked about her experience. I loved my dog, Sarah said. Max was amazing, smart, loyal, perfect temperament, but my trainer kept telling me I was being too soft, that I needed to establish dominance. He made me use choke chains, forced me to use harsh corrections for minor mistakes. Max started showing fear-based aggression. He'd never done that before. What happened to Max? He was reassigned to another handler after I deployed. I heard later he'd been terminated. They said he was too aggressive to work with. Sarah's voice broke. I killed him. By following that trainer's methods, I traumatized my dog so badly they had to euthanize him. It wasn't your fault, Rebecca said firmly. You were following orders from someone who should have known better. Blackwell and his methods killed Max, not you. Can you prove that? I'm going to try. Will you testify about your experience if I file a formal complaint? Sarah hesitated, clearly afraid of retaliation. Then she nodded. Yes. If it means stopping Blackwell from hurting more dogs, yes. Rebecca found 5 other handlers with similar stories, dogs who'd been fine until exposed to Blackwell's training methods, then developed behavioral problems, then were terminated or reassigned. The pattern was undeniable, and Ghost was the latest victim in a long line of dogs being destroyed to hide a toxic training program. Armed with this evidence, Rebecca filed 3 formal complaints. 1, a challenge to Ghost's termination order, arguing that the dog had been improperly assessed and was suitable for continued military service. 2, an investigation request into Commander Marcus Blackwell's training methods, alleging systematic abuse and improper handling protocols. 3. A request for review of all dogs terminated under Blackwell's program over the past 5 years, suggesting many had been improperly euthanized. The base commander's office scheduled a hearing for 1 week later. Rebecca would have to present her case, demonstrate Ghost's suitability for service, and defend her allegations against Blackwell's program. It was a massive risk. If she failed, Ghost would be terminated, and her own career could be damaged by having accused a senior officer of misconduct. But if she succeeded, she could save Ghost's life and potentially reform a training program that had killed or traumatized dozens of dogs. Rebecca spent every available hour preparing. She worked with Ghost constantly, documenting his skills and temperament. She organized her evidence against Blackwell. She coordinated with the handlers willing to testify. And she reached out to civilian canine behavior experts who could provide professional opinions about proper training methods versus abusive ones. The night before the hearing, Rebecca sat in her living room with Ghost's head in her lap, stroking his soft fur, feeling the weight of what she was about to attempt. "I'm scared, boy," she admitted quietly. "What if I can't save you? What if they don't believe me? What if Blackwell's too powerful to challenge?" Ghost looked up at her with trusting eyes, his tail wagging slightly. He didn't understand the stakes, didn't know his life depended on Rebecca's ability to advocate for him tomorrow. He just knew she'd been kind to him, that she'd saved him from the terrifying kennel, that she'd shown him what partnership and trust felt like. And that was enough. "Okay," Rebecca said, her resolve hardening. "We're doing this. Tomorrow we walk into that hearing and we show them who you really are. We show them that you're not aggressive, you're extraordinary, and we make sure no other dog suffers what you've suffered." Ghost's tail wagged harder and he licked Rebecca's hand, his simple way of saying thank you, of saying he trusted her completely. Rebecca just hoped that trust wasn't misplaced. The conference room at Naval Base Coronado was cold and sterile, designed more for bureaucratic efficiency than comfort. Rebecca sat at one end of a long table, Ghost lying calmly at her feet in a perfect downstay. Across from her sat Commander Marcus Blackwell, a man in his 50s, gray hair, stern expression, radiating the kind of rigid authority that came from decades of unquestioned command. Beside Blackwell sat 3 of his training staff, all looking uncomfortable. And at the head of the table sat Captain Jennifer Walsh, the base commander who would ultimately decide Ghost's fate. Captain Walsh reviewed the documents in front of her. Rebecca's challenge to the termination order, her complaints against Blackwell's training program, and Blackwell's counterarguments defending his methods and insisting Ghost was dangerous. "Commander Hayes," Walsh began, "you filed some very serious allegations here. You're not just challenging the termination of one dog, you're accusing a senior officer of systematic abuse and improper training protocols that have resulted in multiple wrongful terminations. Do you understand the gravity of what you're claiming?" "Yes, ma'am, I understand completely, and I stand by every word." "Very well, present your case." Rebecca stood, Ghost immediately standing with her. Perfect heel position, alert but calm. She deliberately brought Ghost to the hearing to demonstrate his actual temperament versus the reports describing him as dangerous and uncontrollable. K9 Ghost, designation M342, is a 3-year-old German Shepherd who's been in the military working dog program for 18 months. His file contains 3 handler reports describing aggressive behavior, disobedience, and danger to personnel and other animals. Based on these reports, a termination order was issued. However, in the 7 days I've been working with Ghost, I've observed none of these reported behaviors. Instead, I've documented a highly skilled, exceptionally responsive dog with advanced training and excellent temperament. Rebecca clicked a remote, and video footage began playing on the conference room screen. The videos showed Ghost performing complex obedience sequences, conducting explosive detection work, completing agility courses, and most importantly, interacting calmly with other dogs and people. As you can see, Ghost responds perfectly to commands, shows no aggression toward humans or animals, and demonstrates the intelligence and focus required of elite military working dogs. His behavior is not consistent with the reports that led to his termination order. Blackwell interrupted, his voice sharp. "Commander Hayes, with respect, a few days of training under controlled conditions doesn't erase months of documented aggressive behavior. That dog attacked other animals, lunged at handlers, showed food aggression and dominance issues. Your videos prove nothing except that he can perform basic commands when he's not under stress. Then let's talk about stress, Rebecca replied. Let's talk about what causes aggressive behavior in otherwise well-trained dogs, because that's where your program's failures become obvious. Rebecca presented her next set of evidence. The interviews with handlers whose dogs had developed behavioral problems after exposure to Blackwell's training methods, the documentation of harsh corrections and punishment-based techniques, the pattern of dogs being labeled aggressive only after working with Blackwell's trainees. 5 handlers have testified that their dogs were fine until assigned to Commander Blackwell's training program. 5 dogs who showed no previous behavioral issues suddenly became aggressive and untrainable. 4 of those dogs were subsequently terminated. The common factor isn't the dogs, it's the training methods being used. Methods that rely on physical punishment, pain-based corrections, and outdated dominance theory that modern canine behavior science has thoroughly debunked. Blackwell's face reddened. I've been training military working dogs for 25 years. My methods are proven, effective, and necessary for creating dogs who can perform under combat conditions. These animals need strong discipline. They need skilled training, Rebecca interrupted. There's a difference between discipline and abuse. Ghost didn't fail because he's aggressive. He failed because 3 handlers used methods that traumatized him, and when he reacted to that trauma with fear-based behaviors, you labeled him dangerous and ordered his termination to hide the evidence of mistreatment. That's a serious accusation, Captain Walsh said quietly. Do you have proof that Commander Blackwell's methods constitute abuse? Rebecca nodded and introduced her final piece of evidence. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a civilian veterinary behaviorist and expert in military working dog psychology who'd reviewed all the documentation and agreed to testify. Dr. Martinez was a woman in her 40s, professional and authoritative, with credentials that made her unimpeachable. She'd worked with military working dog programs across multiple branches and had published extensively on canine training methods. Captain Walsh, I've reviewed K9 Ghost's complete file, including incident reports, handler statements, and video footage of his current behavior under Commander Hayes's handling, Dr. Martinez began. My professional opinion is that Ghost's reported aggressive behaviors are entirely consistent with fear-based responses to aversive training methods. The incident reports describe Ghost as lunging at handler, but the context shows the handler had just performed a hard leash correction. Dogs who are hurt often lunge defensively. That's not aggression, it's self-protection. The report of food aggression describes Ghost growling when a handler reached for his food bowl. But again, context matters. If Ghost had been punished during feeding times or had food withheld as discipline, of course he'd guard his resources. That's normal animal behavior when an animal feels their survival is threatened. And the report of Ghost attacking another dog. Video footage from that incident shows Ghost responding to another dog's aggressive display. Ghost didn't initiate. He defended himself when placed in a situation where he felt threatened. Dr. Martinez pulled up comparison charts showing Ghost's behaviors matched classic patterns of abuse responses, not inherent aggression. None of Ghost's reported behaviors indicate a dangerous or unsuitable dog. They indicate a normal, intelligent dog reacting predictably to traumatic treatment. Under proper handling, which Commander Hayes has clearly provided, Ghost shows his true temperament, stable, responsive, and highly skilled. Furthermore, Dr. Martinez continued, I've reviewed the files of the other dogs terminated under Commander Blackwell's program over the past 5 years. The pattern is consistent and alarming. Dogs with no previous behavioral issues develop problems only after exposure to harsh training methods. Then they're terminated before anyone can identify the real source of the problems, the training itself. In my professional opinion, Commander Blackwell's program has likely resulted in multiple wrongful terminations of suitable working dogs. And if these methods continue, more dogs will be unnecessarily killed to cover up training failures. The room was silent for a long moment. Blackwell looked like he wanted to argue, but seemed unsure how to counter an expert with Dr. Martinez's credentials. Captain Walsh looked between Rebecca, Blackwell, and Dr. Martinez, clearly weighing everything she'd heard. Commander Blackwell, do you have a response to these allegations? Blackwell stood, his posture rigid. Ma'am, I've trained hundreds of military working dogs successfully using my methods. Every handler who's worked with me has P. Raju's deployment-ready dogs. Yes, some dogs don't make it through the program. That's normal. Not every dog is suitable for military service. But labeling every dog who fails as aggressive or dangerous, Rebecca interjected. That's not normal. That's systematic cover-up of training failures. You've been handling dogs for 8 years, Commander Hayes. I've been doing this for 25. Don't presume to lecture me on proper methods. Experience doesn't equal correctness. Doing something wrong for 25 years doesn't make it right. Enough, Captain Walsh said sharply. I've heard sufficient arguments from both sides. I need to make a decision about Ghost's immediate fate, and separately I need to determine whether Commander Blackwell's training program requires investigation. She looked at Ghost, who had remained calmly lying at Rebecca's feet throughout the entire heated discussion, completely unbothered by the raised voices and tension in the room. Commander Hayes approached with K-9 Ghost. Rebecca walked forward, Ghost heeling perfectly at her side. Walsh stood and came around the table, studying the dog carefully. Ghost, sit, Walsh commanded. Ghost immediately sat, his eyes focused on Walsh, waiting for the next command. Down, stay. Ghost dropped into a down position and held it while Walsh walked around him, examining his body language, his responses, his overall demeanor. He's remarkably well-behaved, Walsh observed. Not what I expected from the reports describing him as dangerous and aggressive. Because those reports were wrong, ma'am. Or more accurately, those reports described behaviors that were caused by improper handling, not inherent temperament issues. Walsh returned to her seat. Here's my decision. Ghost's termination order is suspended pending a 30-day evaluation period. Commander Hayes, you will continue as Ghost's handler during this time. You will provide weekly progress reports documenting his behavior, training, and suitability for military service. At the end of 30 days, if Ghost has shown consistent positive behavior and no dangerous tendencies, the termination order will be permanently vacated, and he'll be reinstated to active working dog status with you as his permanent handler. Rebecca felt relief wash through her. Thank you, ma'am. However, Walsh continued, her expression hardening, regarding the allegations against Commander Blackwell's training program, those are serious enough to warrant formal investigation. I'm referring this matter to the Inspector General's office for review. All training activities under Commander Blackwell's supervision are suspended pending investigation findings. Blackwell stood abruptly. Ma'am, that's not. Sit down, Commander. You'll have the opportunity to defend your methods during the investigation. Until then, you're on administrative duties only. No direct contact with handlers or dogs. Walsh looked at everyone in the room. This hearing is concluded. Commander Hayes, take care of Ghost. Commander Blackwell, you'll be contacted by the IG's office within 48 hours. Dismissed. Outside the conference room, Rebecca knelt beside Ghost and hugged him tightly. We did it, boy. 30 days to prove you're perfect, and I know you can do that. Hawk approached, having waited outside during the hearing. How'd it go? Termination suspended, 30-day evaluation, and Blackwell's program is under investigation. That's huge, you actually did it. We're not done yet. 30 days is enough time for Blackwell to try to sabotage Ghost's evaluation or retaliate against the handlers who testified. You think he'd do that? I think he's a man whose entire career is being questioned. Men like that are dangerous when they're cornered. Rebecca's instinct was correct. Over the next week, strange things started happening. Equipment in the training areas would go missing or be tampered with. Rebecca's reports mysteriously disappeared from the system, requiring her to file duplicates. And Ghost's food was contaminated with something that made him sick for 2 days, nothing life-threatening, but enough to disrupt their training schedule. Rebecca couldn't prove Blackwell was behind it, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. She increased security measures, started documenting everything in multiple locations, and made sure Ghost was never left unsupervised. She also reached out to the handlers who'd testified, making sure they were safe and hadn't been threatened or pressured to recant their statements. Most were fine. But Sarah Chen, the young Marine who testified about her dog Max, was clearly terrified. "Someone's been following me," Sarah told Rebecca during a private meeting. "A car that parks outside my apartment, same one shows up near my office. I don't have proof it's connected to Blackwell, but the Timon. G is suspicious," Rebecca finished. "Sarah, document everything, take photos of the car, note the times and locations, and if you ever feel unsafe, you call me immediately." "I'm scared, ma'am. What if testifying was a mistake?" "It wasn't. You did the right thing. And I promise I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Rebecca reported the harassment to Captain Walsh, who assigned military police to keep watch over Sarah and the other witnesses. The intimidation attempt stopped after that. Whoever had been following Sarah apparently didn't want official police attention. Meanwhile, Ghost continued to excel in his evaluation. Rebecca documented every training session, every interaction with other dogs and handlers, every demonstration of his skills and temperament. Ghost was performing at a level that would make him eligible for advanced specialized training, explosive detection, tracking, or even special operations support. By the end of the 30-day evaluation period, Rebecca had compiled a comprehensive file showing Ghost to be one of the most capable military working dogs on the base. The final evaluation hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. This time, the room was packed, not just Walsh and Blackwell, but representatives from the Inspector General's office who were investigating the training program, senior officers from the MWD division, and even a few reporters who'd gotten wind of the case. The story had leaked to the media. Navy SEAL saves aggressive dog, exposes abusive training program. It had become a national story, with animal rights organizations, veteran groups, and military working dog advocates all paying attention to Ghost's fate. The pressure was immense, but Rebecca was ready. She presented her 30-day evaluation report, showing Ghost's consistent, excellent behavior, his advanced skill development, and testimonials from a dozen different handlers who'd worked with him during the evaluation period, all of whom described him as well-behaved, non-aggressive, and highly capable. Dr. Martinez was present again, providing updated behavioral assessments confirming Ghost showed no signs of aggression or temperament problems. The Inspector General's representative also presented preliminary findings from their investigation into Blackwell's training program. They'd identified a pattern of harsh corrections, punishment-based methods, and inadequate supervision that had led to multiple dogs developing behavioral problems. They'd also found evidence that Blackwell had pressured handlers to write negative reports about dogs who'd failed under his methods, essentially creating false documentation to justify terminations. Commander Blackwell used his position and authority to implement training methods that are not aligned with modern best practices for military working dogs, the IG representative stated. His program resulted in multiple unnecessary terminations, wasted resources training dogs who were then improperly assessed as unsuitable, and created a culture where handlers were afraid to speak up about concerns. Our recommendation is that Commander Blackwell be removed from all training responsibilities, required to complete modern canine behavior and training education, and potentially face disciplinary action for his role in the wrongful terminations. Captain Walsh listened to all the presentations, reviewed all the evidence, and then made her decision. Based on the comprehensive evaluation provided by Commander Hayes, the expert opinions of Dr. Martinez, and the findings of the Inspector General's investigation, I am making the following rulings. First, K9 Ghost's termination order is permanently vacated. He is reinstated to active military working dog status with Commander Rebecca Hayes as his permanent handler. Rebecca felt tears of relief threatening. Ghost, lying calmly at her feet, had no idea he'd just been officially saved from death. Second, Commander Marcus Blackwell is relieved of all training duties effective immediately. He will complete a comprehensive retraining program on modern canine behavior and handling methods before being eligible for any future MWD-related assignments. Additionally, he will face a formal reprimand in his service record. Blackwell's face went white, but he said nothing. Third, all dogs terminated under Commander Blackwell's program over the past 5 years will have their cases reviewed. Any dogs who may have been improperly assessed will be considered for rehabilitation and return to service where possible. Finally, the entire military working dog training program at this base will undergo comprehensive reform, implementing evidence-based training methods and improved oversight to prevent this situation from occurring again. Walsh looked at Rebecca. Commander Hayes, you showed exceptional courage in challenging this termination order and bringing these systemic issues to Lig. Your advocacy for K9, Ghost likely saved not just his life, but the lives of future dogs who would have been improperly terminated under the previous system. The Navy owes you gratitude. Thank you, ma'am. I just did what any handler should do, protect their partner. Ghost is fortunate to have you. You're officially assigned as his permanent handler. Take care of him. Always, ma'am. Outside the hearing room, Rebecca was surrounded by reporters, handlers offering congratulations, and animal welfare advocates thanking her for standing up for Ghost. The attention was overwhelming and uncomfortable. Rebecca had never sought publicity, just wanted to save one dog. But Ghost was safe now. That was all that mattered. Sarah Chen approached, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for speaking up when I was too scared, for saving Ghost when I couldn't save Max. Thank you. You were brave too, Sarah. Your testimony helped build the case. You should be proud. Over the following weeks, the story continued to generate attention. Rebecca and Ghost appeared in multiple news features, interviewed about the case and about proper military working dog training methods. The coverage helped educate the public about canine behavior and training, sparked conversations about reform in military working dog programs across all branches, and inspired other handlers to speak up about concerns they'd previously kept silent. The Inspector General's expanded investigation into terminated dogs uncovered 3 other cases similar to Ghost's. Dogs who'd been improperly labeled aggressive and euthanized when they could have been successfully rehabilitated with proper handling. Those findings were devastating. 3 dogs had died unnecessarily, but they also vindicated Rebecca's actions and proved that speaking up, challenging authority, and advocating for those who couldn't speak for themselves was essential, even when it was difficult, even when it risked career consequences. Commander Blackwell quietly retired 6 months later. His legacy would forever be tainted by the investigation and the revelation that his methods had resulted in unnecessary deaths and suffering. Several of his former trainees also transferred to different programs or left military working dog handling entirely, recognizing they needed better training before working with dogs again. And Ghost, he became something extraordinary. 6 months after Ghost's termination order was vacated, Rebecca and Ghost deployed together to Afghanistan in support of a SEAL team conducting counterterrorism operations in Helmand Province. It was Ghost's first deployment, and Rebecca was determined to prove that the dog everyone had labeled too aggressive was actually one of the most capable military working dogs in service. The deployment was intense from day one. The team was operating in hostile territory, conducting raids on Taliban compounds, searching for weapons caches and IED-making materials. Ghost's role was explosive detection, using his exceptional nose to identify explosives before they could be used against American or Afghan forces. On their first mission, Ghost alerted to an IED buried in a road that the team's vehicle convoy was about to travel. His alert was strong and unmistakable, sitting and staring at a specific spot, exactly as he'd been trained. The explosive ordnance disposal team confirmed the presence of a 50-pound IED that would have destroyed the lead vehicle and likely killed everyone inside. That dog just saved at least 6 lives, the team leader, Commander Jack Razor Martinez, told Rebecca after the disposal team cleared the device. And we've been here less than a week. Ghost's good at his job. That's why I fought so hard to save him. Over the next 4 months, Ghost detected 14 more IEDs, several weapons caches, and 2 suicide vests. His nose was so reliable that the team started calling him their guardian angel, because everywhere Ghost went, explosives were found before they could kill anyone. But Ghost proved to be more than just an explosive detection dog. His temperament, which had been labeled aggressive and dangerous, turned out to be exactly what was needed in combat situations. During a raid on a Taliban compound, the team encountered unexpected resistance. Insurgents were barricaded inside a building, firing at the SEALs who were trying to breach. The situation was at a stalemate. The team couldn't advance without taking casualties, but they couldn't leave without completing the mission. Rebecca had an idea. Ghost can clear that building. He's trained for apprehension work. You sure? Razor asked. That's extremely dangerous for the dog. He's a military working dog. This is what he's trained for, and he's the best chance we have of ending this without more shooting. Razor considered, then nodded. Do it. Rebecca gave Ghost the attack command in German, TH. A language used for military working dog commands to prevent enemies from controlling the dogs. FAS. Ghost launched toward the building with terrifying speed and precision. He breached through a window that the seals had broken open, and seconds later, screaming came from inside. Taliban fighters panicking as a large, aggressive German shepherd attacked. Within 2 minutes, 3 insurgents stumbled out of the building with hands raised, surrendering because they couldn't deal with Ghost's assault. The dog had single-handedly ended a firefight that could have resulted in American casualties. When Rebecca called Ghost back, "Hire her," the dog returned immediately, uninjured, calm, waiting for his next command. Jesus Christ, one of the SEALs breathed. That dog is a weapon. That's the dog they wanted to euthanize for being too aggressive, Rebecca said quietly. Turns out, in the right context with the right handler, aggressive means effective warrior. Ghost's reputation spread quickly through the SEAL community. Other teams started requesting him specifically for high-risk operations. Rebecca and Ghost became the go-to team for any mission requiring explosive detection or building clearing. But the deployment that truly cemented Ghost's legend came 3 months in. The team received intelligence about a high-value Taliban target, a bomb maker responsible for numerous attacks on coalition forces. He was holed up in a compound with several guards, and capturing him was critical to disrupting the insurgent network in the region. The raid was planned for night, the SEALs' preferred operating environment. Rebecca and Ghost would go in with the assault team, providing explosive detection and support. The raid started smoothly. The team breached the compound, cleared several buildings, and located the target. But as they were extracting, something went wrong. An explosion rocked the compound. A secondary IED that Ghost had somehow missed, or more likely, that had been remotely detonated by someone watching the raid. The blast collapsed part of a building, and 3 SEALs were trapped under rubble. Chaos erupted. The team had to defend their position against insurgents who were now firing from multiple directions while simultaneously trying to rescue their trapped teammates. And they had to do it all while being unsure if more explosives were hidden around the compound. "Ghost, search," Rebecca commanded, directing the dog to check the immediate area for additional explosives while the team worked to free the trapped SEALs. Ghost swept the area methodically, his nose working overtime, checking every pile of rubble, every corner, every suspicious spot. He alerted twice more, 2 additional IEDs that would have detonated if anyone had stepped wrong while working on the rescue. "Clear those alerts before we move the rubble," Razor ordered. "We can't risk another explosion while we're digging." The explosive ordnance disposal specialist worked quickly, disarming the IEDs Ghost had found. Meanwhile, the rest of the team fought off the insurgent attack, holding their position until the trapped SEALs could be freed. It took 45 minutes. 45 minutes of intense combat, of desperate rescue work, of Ghost continuously checking for explosives to ensure the team's safety. Rebecca stayed at Ghost's side the entire time, directing his search pattern, protecting him from incoming fire, trusting him completely. Finally, the 3 trapped SEALs were freed, injured but alive. The team extracted from the compound, fighting their way back to their vehicles while carrying their wounded. Ghost rode in Rebecca's lap on the way back to base, exhausted and covered in dust, but uninjured. The dog had worked for hours under fire, had detected multiple explosives that saved numerous lives, and had performed flawlessly despite the chaos and danger. Back at base, the team medic checked Ghost over while treating the injured SEALs. "The dog's fine. Tired, dehydrated, but no injuries. He's tougher than most humans I've worked with." Commander Razor Martinez approached Rebecca while she was giving Ghost water and food. "Storm, I need to tell you something. When I first heard we were getting a dog handler whose dog had almost been terminated for aggression, I was concerned. I thought we were getting a problem dog and a handler with something to prove. I was completely wrong. Ghost is the best military working dog I've ever worked with. He's saved more lives on this deployment than I can count. And you're an exceptional handler. The bond between you two, the way you work together, it's remarkable. Thank you, sir. Ghost and I make a good team. More than good, you're legends. Every SEAL team in this region wants to work with you too. And that dog who was supposed to be put down, he's earned more respect in 4 months than most dogs earn in entire careers. After Razor left, Rebecca sat with Ghost in the quiet of the kennel area, stroking his head, processing everything that had happened. You know what's funny, boy? They said you were too aggressive to work, too dangerous, unsuitable for service. And now you're the most requested dog in Afghanistan because that aggression makes you the best at your job. Ghost's tail wagged and he licked Rebecca's hand. Turns out what they called a flaw was actually your greatest strength. You just needed the right handler who understood that, who could channel your drive and intensity into something positive instead of punishing you for having it. Rebecca thought about Commander Blackwell and his punishment-based training methods. He'd seen Ghost's intensity and tried to suppress it through harsh corrections. He'd mistaken a strong working drive for dangerous aggression and tried to break the dog's spirit. But Rebecca had recognized Ghost's intensity for what it really was: exceptional working ability, high intelligence, and the kind of drive that made elite military working dogs. She'd channeled it, directed it, given Ghost appropriate outlets for his energy and intensity. And the result was a dog who'd saved dozens of lives and become one of the most decorated military working dogs in recent history. The deployment ended 4 months later. Rebecca and Ghost returned to Naval Base Coronado as heroes. They'd completed over 100 missions, detected 37 explosive devices, apprehended multiple insurgents, and had 0 mission failures. Ghost was awarded the Animals in War and Peace Medal of Bravery, a rare honor recognizing exceptional service by military animals. Rebecca was promoted to commander and received a Navy Commendation Medal for her work as Ghost's handler and for her role in reforming the base's military working dog training program. The media attention was intense. News outlets wanted interviews. Documentary filmmakers wanted to tell their story. Animal welfare organizations wanted to honor them both. But what mattered most to Rebecca wasn't the recognition or the awards. It was the letter she received from Sarah Chen, the young Marine who'd testified about her dog Max during Blackwell's investigation. Commander Hayes*, I wanted you to know that I'm handling dogs again. After what happened with Max, I quit for a year. I couldn't face working with dogs, knowing I'd failed him so badly. But watching what you did with Ghost, how you saved him, how you proved he wasn't the aggressive monster he'd been labeled as, how you turned him into a hero, it gave me hope. It made me realize that I hadn't failed Max. The training program had failed both of us. I went through new handler training, this time using the evidence-based methods you advocated for. And I just got certified with a new dog, Luna, a Belgian Malinois who reminds me so much of Max. This time I'm doing it right. I'm using positive reinforcement, building trust and partnership instead of trying to dominate, and Luna is thriving. Thank you for showing me, showing all of us, that there's a better way. Thank you for fighting for Ghost when it would have been easier to let them kill him. Thank you for being the kind of warrior who protects those who can't protect themselves. You changed the entire military working dog community, and you changed my life. Respectfully, Corporal Sarah Chen, USMC. Rebecca read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was why she'd fought so hard. Not for recognition or glory, but to protect Ghost and to ensure other dogs wouldn't suffer the same abuse and wrongful termination. And it had worked. The reforms implemented after Blackwell's removal had spread throughout the military working dog community. Training programs across all branches were being updated to reflect modern, evidence-based methods. Handlers were being educated about canine behavior and communication. And dogs like Ghost, high drive, intense, formerly labeled as problematic, were being recognized as the exceptional working animals they actually were. 2 years after Ghost's near euthanasia, Rebecca received an unexpected invitation. The American Kennel Club wanted to honor Ghost at their annual awards ceremony, giving him their award for canine excellence in the service dog category. The ceremony was in New York City, a civilian event that celebrated exceptional dogs across various categories. Rebecca was initially hesitant. She and Ghost were warriors, not show dogs. They didn't belong at fancy ceremonies. But when she learned that the award came with a $10,000 donation to a military working dog organization of her choosing, Rebecca agreed. She directed the donation to a program that provided veterinary care for retired military working dogs. Dogs like Ghost who'd served their country and deserved support in their retirement years. At the ceremony, Rebecca stood on stage in her dress uniform. Ghost sitting perfectly at her side, looking every inch the professional military working dog he'd become. The audience, mostly civilians who worked in various dog-related industries, gave them a standing ovation. The AKC president presented the award and asked Rebecca to speak about Ghost's journey. 3 years ago, Ghost was hours away from being euthanized, Rebecca began. He'd been labeled too aggressive, too dangerous, unsuitable for service. 3 handlers had failed with him, and the decision was made that he should be killed. But nobody had bothered to ask why Ghost was behaving the way he was. Nobody had investigated whether the training methods being used were appropriate. Nobody had considered that maybe the problem wasn't the dog, maybe the problem was how the dog was being treated. I took a chance on Ghost because I saw something others missed. I saw a scared, traumatized dog who'd been punished for having the very qualities that make excellent working dogs: intelligence, independence, high drive, and intensity. Under proper handling, those qualities transformed Ghost from a dangerous, dog-facing death into one of the most decorated military working dogs in recent history. Ghost has saved dozens of lives. He's detected explosives that would have killed my teammates. He's cleared buildings under fire. He's performed every mission asked of him with excellence, and he's done it all with the intensity that others labeled as aggression. Rebecca looked down at Ghost, who gazed back at her with complete trust and devotion. This dog taught me something important. There's no such thing as a bad dog. There are only bad handlers, bad training methods, and bad systems that give up on animals instead of understanding them. Ghost isn't special because he's inherently superior to other dogs. He's special because someone finally gave him the handling, training, and respect he deserved. Every dog has potential. Every dog deserves a chance to be understood, to be trained properly, to be given appropriate outlets for their energy and drive. Ghost's story should remind all of us, whether we work with military dogs, service dogs, or family pets, that labels like aggressive or dangerous often tell us more about how humans have failed the animal than about the animal itself. The audience erupted in applause again. Several people in the front row were openly crying, moved by Ghost's story and Rebecca's advocacy. After the ceremony, Rebecca was approached by dozens of people, dog trainers wanting to learn more about her methods, military working dog handlers who'd been inspired by her stand against abusive training, and civilians who simply wanted to meet Ghost and thank Rebecca for saving him. One elderly woman, a dog trainer in her 70s who'd worked with animals for over 50 years, hugged Rebecca tightly. "Thank you," the woman said, "for fighting for that dog, for challenging the old, cruel methods, for showing the world that positive training works even with difficult dogs. You've changed minds and saved lives, not just Ghost's life, but the lives of countless dogs who will benefit from the reforms you sparked." "I just did what was right." That's exactly what makes you extraordinary. You saw injustice and you refused to accept it, even when it would have been easier to walk away. The world needs more people like you. Ghost retired from active service at age 7 after completing 3 deployments and over 500 missions. He detected 127 explosive devices, apprehended 23 insurgents, and had a perfect mission success rate. He was one of the most decorated military working dogs in American military history. But more than his accomplishments, Ghost's legacy was the reform he'd sparked. The military working dog training program he'd been nearly killed by no longer existed. In its place was a modern, evidence-based system that treated dogs as partners, not as subordinates to be dominated. Hundreds of dogs who might have been labeled aggressive and terminated under the old system were now thriving as military working dogs, search and rescue dogs, or service dogs. The reforms extended beyond the military. Civilian dog training organizations had adopted similar evidence-based methods, moving away from punishment and dominance toward positive reinforcement and partnership. And it all started because one Navy SEAL refused to let them kill a dog labeled too aggressive. Rebecca retired from the Navy a year after Ghost, after 15 years of service. She and Ghost moved to a small house in Colorado, where they spent Ghost's retirement years hiking, training other handlers in modern dog handling methods, and advocating for military working dog welfare. Ghost lived to age 13, a good long life for a German Shepherd, especially one who'd served in combat. He died peacefully at home, surrounded by Rebecca and the 3 other dogs she'd adopted, all retired military working dogs who'd found sanctuary with her. At Ghost's funeral, attended by dozens of handlers he'd worked with, SEALs whose lives he'd saved, and advocates whose work had been inspired by his story, Rebecca gave one final speech about the dog who'd changed everything. Ghost was supposed to die at age 3, killed because humans failed him. Instead, he lived to 13, saved countless lives, and inspired reforms that will protect dogs for generations. His story reminds us that every life has value, every being deserves understanding and compassion, and that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones nobody else believed in. Thank you, Ghost, for your service, your courage, and for teaching me that the strongest partnerships are built on trust and respect, never fear and domination. Rest easy, warrior, you earned it. They scattered Ghost's ashes in the mountains he'd loved to explore during retirement, in a meadow where he'd spent countless hours playing and running free. And at Naval Base Coronado, they installed a statue, a German Shepherd in alert position with a plaque that read, K9 Ghost, too aggressive to live, too exceptional to die. Saved from wrongful termination, went on to save over 100 lives. Served 3 deployments with distinction. His legacy, proof that there are no bad dogs, only bad training. In honor of all military working dogs who have been misunderstood, mistreated, or wrongfully terminated, may we always strive to understand before we condemn, to train with compassion rather than punishment, and to recognize that intensity and drive are gifts, not flaws. Never give up on a warrior. The statue became a pilgrimage site for dog handlers, for advocates, for anyone who believed in second chances and the power of understanding over judgment. And Rebecca, she continued training handlers, advocating for dogs, and ensuring Ghost's legacy lived on through the thousands of dogs who were treated with respect and understanding, instead of being killed for having the very qualities that made them exceptional. One dog had changed an entire system. One SEAL had refused to accept injustice. And together they'd proven that labels like too aggressive often meant too misunderstood. Ghost had been extraordinary not despite his intensity, but because of it. He just needed someone brave enough to see it. The end. Epilogue 10 years later. The Rebecca Hayes Military Working Dog Training Center opened at Naval Base Coronado 10 years after Ghost's death. The facility represented everything Ghost's story had inspired: modern, evidence-based training methods, handler education emphasizing partnership over dominance, and a commitment to never giving up on a dog without first understanding what was causing behavioral issues. The center had strict protocols: no punishment-based training, no physical corrections, no dominance theory. Every handler trained there learned to communicate with dogs, to understand canine body language, to build relationships based on trust. And in the 10 years since the center opened, not a single dog had been terminated for aggression. Because when dogs were trained properly, understood fully, and handled with skill and compassion, aggression rarely developed. Rebecca visited the center regularly during its first decade, teaching classes and sharing Ghost's story with new generations of handlers. She was in her 60s now, retired but still passionate about military working dog welfare. One day, a young Navy handler approached her after a class. The handler, a woman in her 20s named Lieutenant Amanda Torres, was struggling with her dog, a high-drive Belgian Malinois named Storm who reminded Rebecca achingly of Ghost. "Ma'am, they're saying Storm is too aggressive, that she's untrainable, they want to reassign her or worse, but I know she's not aggressive, she's just intense. She reminds me of Ghost from all the stories I've heard." Rebecca smiled. "Then you know what to do, fight for her, understand her, give her the handling she deserves, and prove everyone wrong." "What if I fail? What if I can't save her the way you saved Ghost?" "You won't fail, because you already understand what took me too long to learn. Intensity isn't aggression. Drive isn't danger. High energy doesn't mean untrainable. Storm needs a handler who matches her energy, channels her drive, and gives her appropriate outlets. That's you. I'm scared. Good, being scared means you care. It means you understand the stakes, but don't let fear stop you from doing what's right. Amanda left that meeting determined, empowered, ready to fight for Storm the way Rebecca had fought for Ghost. 6 months later, Rebecca received a message. Storm had not only been saved from reassignment, but had excelled in training and was being deployed with Amanda to support special operations in hostile territory. The sick. Look continued. Dogs who might have been labeled too aggressive were instead understood, trained properly, and given chances to become the exceptional warriors they were meant to be. All because one German Shepherd had been hours from death, and one Navy SEAL had refused to accept that fate. Ghost's legacy lived on, in every dog saved from wrongful termination, in every handler trained in compassionate methods, in every life saved by a military working dog who was given a chance instead of a death sentence. That was the power of one person refusing to give up. That was Ghost's gift to the world. And it would endure forever.